It's the turn of the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Peter Obi.
Mr. Vice President, fellow candidates, we now live in a country where we have the highest number of poor people in any nation, 87 million, and growing 6% every minute. Our country today has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. Our HDI has dropped from 152 to 157. Our global competitive index has dropped from 124 to 127. In terrorism, we have moved from 7 to number 3, just behind Iran and Afghanistan. Our inequality have worsened. Our misery index have worsened. Our stress index, we are now 148 over 149. If you look at all this, it's hinged on 2 things from studies, and that is on education and unemployment. Our unemployment has moved from 24, as you know, to 40 today. The more you can invest in education, the better your economy. That shows we're not investing in education. In issue of unemployment, which has worsened, we have millions of our children out of school. And you can see from a study that there's a straight link between SMEs and growing your economy. And we're not supporting on SMEs very well. If you look at what China has been able to do with the SMEs, SME in China is contributing 60% of their GDP. And 60% of China GDP is 7.2 trillion, which is 18% of Nigerian GDP. They are contributing 60% of the employment. On urban employment, they are contributing 80%. 80% of urban unemployment in China is 480. 80% of that is 380, which is twice Nigerian economy. China today, using the same SME, is guaranteeing 10 million jobs annually. This year alone, half of this year, China have produced 7.2 million jobs, which is over 40% of their target. Within the same period, Nigeria lost 44 million jobs. So we need to re-gig this and have a better focus on how we can create jobs. As long as we don't create jobs and have the number of unemployed youths in their productive age that we have today, we're going to have crisis. That's why we have issue of insecurity, issue of instability. All sorts of things we're witnessing today is because we have not been able to create jobs that other countries are creating with effortless ease. And I know that Atiku Abubakar Obi presidency can produce jobs, which is the most critical.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Candidate of the PDP. Now, we have seen vice presidents fall out with their principals. Now, should this happen to you if you win the forthcoming election, how would you handle it?
Well, I assure you that that won't be the case. Because like it's clearly stated, the vice president have a role, and the role of the vice president, to me, is most critical role, because we're talking about the economy of this country. The main problem of this country today is its economy. Economy is on the knees. And because it's not working, it's not creating jobs, not doing anything, the vice president is in charge of rigging this economy and rebuilding it to where you can create jobs, to where you can be able to ensure that there's financing in various areas of our government. The vice president is in charge of, for example, debt management. Today we have virtually at a level where our debt is not sustainable because we are using over 50% of our revenues to service debt, which means we don't even have enough to be able to do infrastructural projects that is highly needed in this country. Today, your country is owing about 22.7 trillion, $80 billion. And we need to do more, and you can't even find the money to do it. So the vice president office is critical. That you're not today part of G20, you're not part of BRICS nation, even the Mint nation where you are, is because you have a poor economy. Because if you look at the BRICS nations, every other government there, Mexico has a GDP of over 1 trillion and per capita of over 8,000. Turkey, that is there, has a GDP of 800 billion and per capita of over 10,000. Indonesia has, and your own is low. So the vice president has a role to build the economy, to create jobs, to be able to make the country work. So it's a critical role. In falling out with the president, if you're doing the right thing, you can't fall out with anybody. I can assure you of that. If you continue to do the right thing, because the vice president who chose you for a reason. He knows that you have something to deliver. So you're not there. You're there to be loyal to him and serve Nigeria faithfully. So I don't see where there's a problem. I can tell you I've never had any issue with anybody in government, and it won't start with this, because we will together start making Nigeria work again.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP. Now, closely related to that question is the fact that the aggregate investment in Nigeria in 2018 is put at about $60.8 billion, only 13.6% of our GDP. It has never gone above 16% in the last 10 years. Now, why have we failed so woefully? And what are you going to do differently as a government?
If you look at our economy, aggregate investment is not where I'm going to look about. Now look at the shallowness of the economy, starting from everything. If you look at, let me just use one thing, your capital market. Your capital market today is only $30 billion. It just lost $2 trillion anyway, about almost $8 billion in the past 1 year. But look at it. South Africa is $900 billion, the second economy in Africa. That shows the shallowness of your economy, because what you're doing is that you have a government that is trying to do what it's not supposed to do. The role of government is supervision and create the support and the guarantees that will enable private sector to drive the economy. So that investment needs to triple, because it's even low compared with that's why your size of your economy is very shallow. So for us, and that is why it's not creating jobs. That's why you have the level of unemployment you have today. So if you're talking about how to drive up the investment, if you look at everything that's been done, is that you need to look at the overall economy, regig it properly, where the private sector will drive the economy. There will be more investment. A lot of people, your banks today, all the loans they've given is about 15% of your GDP. When other countries are doing 50, 100%, China alone is doing 250% of their GDP as credits to businesses, to private sector. And you can see why you have better investment in other nations than Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Before we went on that break, we were talking about the opportunity of the candidates to have an opportunity to do a rebuttal. And if you have any clarifications to make, please indicate, and you will have 1 minute. The candidate of the PDP indicated, right? Please go ahead.
Well, let me clarify again what I said. What I said, fighting corruption is not an economic policy. It is not that you can't fight corruption, but you can fight it more aggressively while addressing economic issues. For example, in 2015, unemployment and underemployment was 24%. Today it's 40%. In 2015, we attracted $21 billion in foreign direct investment. We attracted only 17 last year. We attracted only 12 last year. That means it's going to, our GDP was 520 in 2015. Our per capita was 2,500. Today it's under 1,900. If you look at our stock market, it's lost over 2 trillion in 1 year. So that is not any policy. You're not creating jobs. You're not doing the right thing, and you're just fighting corruption. You can't shut down your shop and be chasing criminals.
Thank you very much.
To come back, sir.
Thank you. Please. There are rules and guidelines to this debate. You are not allowed to cheer in the audience. You are not allowed to cheer, and you are not allowed to jeer at anyone. Please, let's stick by the rules. Otherwise, we may be forced to remove you from the hall. Please, let's be matured. Thank you. Thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP.
Well, what we are subsidizing today is inefficiency. If you get it right, the price will still come down. There's no way a country can have a budget of 340 billion naira for health, which translates to 5 naira a day for its citizens, and then pay 1 trillion for subsidy. There's no way you can have an education budget, which is the most critical component of your development, at 400-something billion, and you're paying subsidy of 1 trillion. It is a waste. You need to reverse it, because you're not paying, you're not dealing with the engine that will drive your economy tomorrow. Everybody knows that even petroleum itself is a baggage economy. At the time people are developing a new economy, and then you're not paying attention to that. What are you actually subsidizing? Look at it. Nigeria has one of the low car ownership in the world. It's 10 per thousand. So we have only 2 million vehicles, and you're paying almost 1 trillion when you have 87 million people that are poor. You can't do that. It's totally, you need to reverse it. And I can tell you, if you do the right things, the price will come down, because you're just paying for the delay in importation, the number of time cargoes stay in the port, and everything. We can't continue to pay for inefficiency in this country. I can tell that you can remove it, do the right things, the price of petroleum will come down.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP. Now, the Nigerian economy as of today is still heavily dependent on the oil sector for its foreign exchange earnings and for other revenue. Now, what is or what will be your strategy for economic diversification? Because we have talked, government after government have talked about diversification of the economy. But each time we have seen not real effort at diversification. What will be your government's strategy?
You just said it, there's no real effort in doing that. You have to look at the components of your contribution of various sectors to your GDP. And if you look at it, one component needs to be tackled: manufacturing. No country that is doing well, if you look at the GDP of China, 40% is from manufacturing. Indonesia, 40%. Malaysia, 40%. Even in the Western world, yours is under 8%, and your factories are closing down. So you need to reverse that and you need to support your SMEs properly. Not just saying, I will support them, but to do it more efficiently. You can look at your loan portfolios. Today, the total loans by the banks is 19 trillion, and only 0.5%, about 5%, 0.5% of that goes to your SMEs. When in other countries, it's about 20%. So there's no way, if you can support the SMEs properly and be able to work on your manufacturing, which then leads that you must do something with your power. Because what you're generating today is too low. Look at your competitors. The lowest that you can see in the mint countries is Indonesia, that is generating 50,000 for 250 million people, and you're generating about 4,000 for 200 million.
Thank you very much. Well, let me start from here this time, and let me start with the candidate of the PDP. The African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Nigeria was instrumental in putting that in place, but Nigeria is yet to sign. Would you say that Nigeria should sign and belong to the Continental Economic Bloc? What advantages do you think Nigeria stands to reap from that?
I think Nigeria needs to look at that agreement properly. Because actually, if you had built your economy as strong as it should be, we will benefit more. We are the biggest market. Yes, you think about people bringing in their goods here, but considering that the resources of the human resources of this country and the entrepreneurial spirit of the average Nigerian, we would have been able to build facilities, manufacturing facilities that will drive export, not just within Africa. African trade today is less than 9%. And if we get it right, it can go as high as 30% or 40%. The foreign exchange you're saying today you're not earning from oil. Oil line gives you 80% of your foreign exchange, when in effect, if you do the right things, you can have twice that coming from manufacturing. Other countries that don't have anything to do with oil are driving their foreign exchange earning all from manufacturing. So you have to look at the agreement, look at those things we're not doing well here, put them in place, and sign that agreement, because it's going to be a win-win for us. It's just that the manufacturer said, let's look at this. Let's know what is there for us. There's no way you can be part of packaging something and it gets to the stage of signing, you walk out of it. So what were you doing when you were part of packaging, putting it together? It doesn't make sense.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP.
Thank you very much. Like I said before, our government will be demand-driven, not supply-driven. That means you need to consult the people. Be at the stage of planning, not at the stage of signing. You say, oh, well, we need to go and consult the people. We will do it before we get to that stage. Two, you don't need to fear about China's transshipment. That shows inefficiency. Labor is more expensive in China today than it is in Nigeria. In fact, we have 87 million people who don't have jobs. So if goods that are manufactured in China can leave China and you pay the high shipment, including duty clearing, and it's cheaper than what you manufacture, something is wrong here. So you fix it. And look at let me just give you an example. Just Apapa, to bring out goods in Apapa, costs more than it costs to bring the goods from Europe to here.
Thank you very much.
Just transport.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP, let me take you to the ICT sector. It is one of the fastest growing in the world today, and the power of ICT to transform the economy is not in doubt. What will your government do as far as the ICT sector is concerned?
Well, you're talking about investment in education, in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics education. That is the future. I've said it before that the more you invest in education, the better your economy. So we'll aggressively invest in education. I've done this even as a governor of a state, where I took a state from being number 28 to number 1. Because we know the value of education. I'm the first to buy and equip all our schools with ICT. I understand what that is all about. Go to HP, I bought the highest computer ever bought by a government in Africa, 30,000. So I know the value. I know what it is today. Just look at one simple thing. The economy of Nigeria is $420 billion. South Africa is 280, that's 700. Egypt, that is number 3, is 250, 950. When Apple market capitalization is 1 trillion. So you need to invest in that. And it's shown clearly in the world that in 2020, you have 25 million STEM jobs available in the world. We will take ICT serious. We will invest in it. That's why I said you can't continue doing subsidy when you need to invest money in the future. You're driving yesterday. If you continue to do what we're doing, you're kind of investing in yesterday. Those who think about yesterday and today will miss tomorrow. We need to invest in tomorrow. And I will invest in ICT aggressively. That's what our government will do. And I'm sure that's what Atiku will do.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any rebuttals? on any of the issues. Thank you very much, candidate of the PDP. Nigeria's ease of doing business ranking is currently at 146 out of 190 countries, and there's been an improvement in recent times, yet this is not a very good ranking for our country and for our economy. What will you do to improve the ease of doing business if you get elected?
Well, first to look at where your competitors are. If I belong to the BRICS nations, where are they? If I belong to the MINT nations, where are they? If you look at all the rankings, they are just below 100 and you're 146. So it's not good for you to compete. And what are you going to do that? I keep saying that government needs to move out of business and do the right things. There's so many things you can do. Let me take issue of port, for example. Nigerian Ports Authority, for years, looked at the expansion that is coming and everything and decided not to invest. Instead, we're using money wrongly. Nigerian Ports Authority is the only port in the world that has an office, even guest house, outside this country of operation. They have a guest house in London. And that is the problem. You're not investing money in the business. And the reason why they're not investing money in the business is that the source of their money, is the waste that is in government continues to drive their process. So you need to get these things to be more efficient by allowing them to get their money from the capital market. If the money they are using to operate today is from the capital market, they will become more efficient because they have monies, loans that they need to pay back. They need new managers, and banks will be after them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Candidate of the PDP, what will be the party's foreign policy thrust?
Well,
will Africa still be the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy?
It will remain so. Because I believe that we're first Africans and we have a lot to gain and to offer Africa. And while dealing with other nations, making sure that our relationship is beneficial to our country and brings a lot of value in terms of security, in terms of our economic turnaround and everything that will help us to create jobs and help us to see that it will be a win-win situation. Not a situation where we now go around all over the world borrowing. We would go more to learn about what they are doing, because I believe that what they are doing will be more valuable to us to implement here than a situation where we're almost going to borrow everything from China.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP.
Let me start first by thanking Nigerians, and secondly, thanking my dear wife for his support, especially in this particular journey. And also to remind Nigerians that Atiku Obi presidency is about making Nigeria work again, because Nigeria is not working today. We are in a situation where 4 years ago, on March 26, 2015, our president said to us, if I fail to deliver, choose your leader. The question is, have they delivered? Today we have a situation where our president told our children that are drowning in the sea, they're on their own. Those children are not on their own. We will care for them. We will look for them. We will ensure that vulcanizer who needs power gets power.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate of the White, please. The candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Peter Obi.